Injectables are super popular these days. You guys obviously notice it on a lot of influencers because we get a lot of stuff done to our faces. And sometimes when you're talking shit about our faces, you get it wrong. There's a difference between Botox and filler. So today we're gonna talk about the differences. What's Botox? What's filler? All right, first we're gonna talk about neurotoxins, and the most common brand name that you guys know of is Botox. But there are other brands. There's Dysport, there's Xeomin, and there's a new one. It's actually dubbed Neutox, and it's Jeuveau. Neurotoxins are produced by a bacterium, and that bacterium is botulinum, which you guys all know as botulism. Like I hear people say, it's botulism. It's not the correct way to say it. It's a botulinum. But botulism, as you guys know, is like a form of like a bacteria poisoning. And so I think people freak out when they hear this because they're like, you're poisoning your body. But the truth is, the dosage that they're using in something like Botox is not high enough to be toxic. And in fact, when they inject it, it's very localized. It's not gonna spread much further than like maybe 3 centimeters from where it's been placed. The way that neurotoxins work is they block the signal from the nerves to the muscles so the muscle can't contract. And so the main reason why you would wanna use something like Botox is to help your wrinkles actually smooth out and relax. And the lines that I'm talking about are your expression lines. And that's why sometimes people will say like, she has Botox face because she's like stuck like this and you can't really tell what's going on in her mind because you can't really see anything move. That's because of Botox, because of a neurotoxin. An example of expression lines would be, for instance, when you smile, you get crow's feet. When you wrinkle your nose, you get the little bunny lines. When you're scowling, you get the 11 lines. And I have all of them right now because I'm pregnant and I can't get Botox. And then when you raise your forehead and your brows, you get these lines. So those would be very prime examples and probably the most common areas that are used for neurotoxins and injectables like Botox. Now, a place that we don't use Botox is we don't use it to plump our cheeks. We don't put it in our lips. So whenever somebody says, she's got too much Botox in her lips, no, she doesn't. She doesn't have any Botox in her lips. If somebody put Botox in her lips, then she's got other problems to worry about. Some people also say that neurotoxins like Botox will also prevent wrinkles. I think that's a very controversial thing to say because my opinion is once you start using something like Botox, you're not gonna stop using it. You're just gonna like keep using it. But people are like, well, if you start using it when you're young, then you're going to see less wrinkles. They'll be less deep, I guess, less pronounced as you get older. But the problem is, again, you're not going to stop doing the Botox just because your lines aren't as pronounced, I guess is my whole opinion of it. So in my opinion, I wouldn't recommend starting Botox until you have lines that bother you, that actually, when you stop making it an expression, you still see the line, like it stays there. Then I would start to use Botox because I feel like you don't need to get into that game too early. You don't wanna look like you're older, you don't wanna look like you don't have any expression. And to be honest, sometimes expression lines are nice, you know, they can really show off your personality. You guys wouldn't have the fun skincare reaction videos that I do if I couldn't make a reaction, if I showed zero emotion in my face, right? So you don't want to overdo it, and I think always start slow when you're getting something like Botox. The area that I recommend the most is always going for your crow's feet first, because crow's feet and your eye area are what make you look a little bit older as you start to age. It's like the first place where we see signs of aging. So that's where I recommend people test it out, and it's such a small area, it really gives you a good idea. Botox and neurotoxins can be used for other treatments as well. They can fix asymmetries, so like let's say you've got one brow that's just naturally higher than the other, then you can actually have a doctor go in there, some kind of a professional injector go in, and they can actually help lift your brow to match it, and that actually leads to a whole other kind of treatment. You can get little mini brow lifts from it. If they just inject it the right way, they can actually help your muscle contract in a different way so that it lifts your brows. But that's also a reason why you'd want to go to an expert injector, because they can also do the opposite. They can drop your brows, they can actually make your face look asymmetrical. So you want to make sure you're going to somebody who really knows your anatomy and really knows the way your muscles work. People that can't get neurotoxins are women that are pregnant. If you're breastfeeding, you don't want to chance it either. And then also, you don't want to use Botox if you have some kind of neurological disease, because that can actually affect that as well. We don't know a lot of like the long-term studies of these things too, so it's one of those why chance it kind of situations. So I tell a lot of women, you could probably keep getting Botox if you're trying to get pregnant, but why chance it? As far as the costs for Botox, the national average is about $550 per session, but it really does vary depending on where you live, who you go see. Doctors in Beverly Hills are obviously going to charge a lot more than a doctor in Iowa because they have to pay their rent. So those are things to keep in mind. But some doctors and some expert injectors, and I say expert injectors because you can also go to like dermatologists, you can go to nurse practitioners, you can go to PAs. There are a lot of people who are experienced and professional and that can do injectables like Botox, but you just want to make sure that they have really good reviews, they have experience doing this. You don't want to be their guinea pig because that's always an issue. But a lot of the time they either charge per unit or they charge per area. I tend to go to somebody who likes to charge per area, that's Dr. Deer, and it's just because it's very straightforward to me. I know that like for my forehead, I'm gonna pay one price, for my crow's feet, I'm gonna pay a whole other price. One of the questions I get about Botox and neurotoxins a lot is, does it hurt? And it actually doesn't. You can numb the area and they would just use a, like a topical numbing cream, but it really just feels kind of like mosquito bites, like little tiny pinpricks, and it's very fast, it's a very quick treatment, so I tend to not need numbing unless we're really gonna go to town on my face, which we haven't done lately, again, because I'm pregnant. Neurotoxins come in a powder form and your doctor actually adds saline to it to make a mixture and then they inject that into your skin. And if you look at the needle, I'm always so surprised. These needles are super tiny, tiny, tiny needles, and that's probably why it doesn't hurt that much. Something else to keep in mind before you get your neurotoxin done, your Botox, is you wanna make sure you avoid anything like aspirin or any kind of like blood thinning medication. And ideally you wanna avoid those up to 2 weeks before, and that's because you could get bruising, which is actually the most common side effect of getting something like Botox. If you're new to Botox also, some people say that they get headaches after they first get Botox, so sometimes within the first 24 to 48 hours, and that's just a weird side effect. I don't really know why that happens, but it can cause a little bit of a Botox headache is what we call it, and that's completely normal. It usually takes about 3 to 7 days to see the full effect of something like Botox, so your doctor might have you come back in for a follow-up a week later, and that's just because they want to take a look at your skin and just make sure that it's doing exactly what they want it to do. It also lasts for about 3 to 4 months. For some people, if your expression lines aren't really strong, it can last even up to 6 months. Once it goes away, your muscles go back to normal. They say that it trains your muscles to relax a little bit more, and so your lines are a little bit less pronounced over time. I'm not sure if that's completely true because guess what? I've been using Botox for a long time and my lines are all completely back, so I'm not sure how true that is. It's also recommended that you don't rub the area for at least 12 hours after you get something like Botox. That's because you don't want to spread it into areas that you don't want it to be. And I know that it's like a strange thought, like why would you rub that area? But also if you're a person that uses a jade roller, you use gua sha, even just like a facial cleansing brush, those are all ways of rubbing and massaging your skin, so you want to avoid those when you first get your Botox. There are lots of other uses for neurotoxins like Botox. You can treat migraines with it, muscular disorders, bowel disorders. I don't really know the function of that, how it works exactly, but it's something that I've read. It helps with bladder control, muscle stiffness, and also muscle spasms. And then another way that it's very commonly used actually is to treat sweating, especially for people that have hyperhidrosis where they really have uncontrollable sweating. And it's really interesting when it's used like that because it lasts a lot longer. Sweat glands are much smaller than muscles, so it's a really interesting treatment because it's very effective and I've seen the way it works on people, and it's very, very cool. Another really cool way that I've seen Botox and neurotoxins used is to treat masseters, which are these muscles that are right here on the sides of your jaw. You might see some people that have really pronounced jaw lines right here where they almost look like they're square. And so if they get Botox or neurotoxins injected into those muscles, over time those muscles start to almost like atrophy. They stop getting bigger because obviously the more you use your muscles, the bigger your muscles get. It's the same with this area. So then you start to notice that they maybe have more defined chin lines. They're more angular and pointed down. So they get more of that like elongated look. You've seen a lot of celebrities do this. It's a really very cool treatment. It basically makes your face go from a masculine shape to a more feminine shape. Whenever people ask where I recommend getting Botox whenever they're like starting off, I always say like look at the upper half of your face and go to a professional who's gonna probably inject the upper half of your face and recommend that. And the only reason for that is because it can be very strange when you start to Botox this area. You can definitely use Botox to treat like the little fine smoker's lines is what they call them around your lips, or even to treat this area too. But what I find is when people start to Botox above their lips and around their nose, they get that grinchy look, and you guys have seen it. It's like a monkey grinchy look. It's like I can't even do it. But you can really tell, and that's why I think a lot of people confuse Botox with lip fillers sometimes, is because they can tell that something's going on in this area of their lips, but they think it's in the lips, and what's really happening is they're Botoxing this area. All right, next up, we're gonna talk about filler, which is completely different from neurotoxins because instead of freezing your muscles, it is plumping your face in different ways. So filler most commonly is known as a temporary fix, but it can actually come in materials that are permanent too, or pretty permanent. And I always throw out there that I don't think that filler actually completely ever goes away from your face once you start injecting it. And the reason for that is because filler can actually stimulate collagen production as well in your skin. You end up getting like a lasting plumpness no matter what, whenever you use filler. The most common form of filler is usually hyaluronic acid, which is a sugar molecule that's naturally found in our skin, but obviously this is a synthetic version of it. The thing to know about filler though is even if it's hyaluronic acid, it comes in different thickness and forms. So that's one of the reasons why you wanna go to somebody who's an expert with this, because they're gonna choose the right filler in the right thickness and right form that's gonna do the job that you want. So if you're gonna get, for instance, cheek filler, you might want something that's a little bit more robust because it's acting kind of like a structural kind of filler where it's gonna hold your cheeks up and give you that plumpness. But if you're gonna get your lips done, you want them to be a little bit more juicy and softer. So you don't wanna use the same kind of filler in both areas because they're gonna have a different kind of effect. Some of the commonly used brands for hyaluronic acid fillers are Restylane, you've probably heard of, Juvederm, and there's also something called Belotero. But even within those brands, there are different types of filler because they have different types of particles. So again, the thickness changes. So if you're looking for something more robust, again for the cheek area, you're gonna wanna go with something like Restylane Lift or Juvederm Voluma. Those have larger particles, which are gonna help to rebuild that area. Now, if you're gonna go for something that's a little bit softer, you want smaller particles, that's like Restylane Silk. That's used commonly in your lips. If you have some fine lines that just, you can't get them to go away with something like Botox, then they might fill them, but they're really small, so you want something that's gonna have smaller particles. So again, Restylane Silk would work for that. And then if you want to fill areas like lip lines, you want something that's light and slippery and malleable because that area, you want it to be, you know, very malleable. You want it to move around and show that expression in your lips. Then you'll want something like Juvederm Vibella or Belotero Balance. A lot of the time when I hear these names being said out loud, you'll actually just hear like a doctor say Vibella instead of saying Juvederm Vibella. It's a very like funny thing. Everything gets kind of like shortened up. And also, so you know, hyaluronic acid fillers last about 9 to 12 months. It really kind of depends on your metabolism, how fast you're metabolizing the filler in your body. But like I said, I feel like it never truly goes away, and because it's stimulating collagen production as well, you still get a little bit more volume that doesn't go away. So I've seen comments saying that my lips, for instance, that I have had filler in, I must be getting it done even while I'm pregnant. It's so controversial. I'm not crazy, you guys, and actually, I don't think I could find a doctor that would actually give me lip filler while my belly is hanging out right now, but I wouldn't even try it anyway. Whatever you guys are seeing on my lips is probably either collagen that has been produced there and also just leftover filler that probably won't ever go away. Besides hyaluronic acid fillers, there are also calcium fillers like Radiesse. Those last a little bit longer, more like 12 to 14 months. What's really interesting about calcium fillers is they're obviously made out of the same material as, say, your bones or teeth. They're made out of calcium. So you can actually see them in x-rays and CT scans, which you can't really see when you get hyaluronic acid fillers. So it's very interesting, but they're used for really deep lines. And the way that Radiesse has been approved by the FDA is to treat nasal labial folds, and those can get really pronounced, and so people want to fill those areas. I tend to think that it's a little bit noticeable looking when people fill that area because I've had nasal labial folds since I was like a teenager. I can't remember not having the lines on the sides of my mouth, so I feel like it looks very unnatural, but if you want to fill that area, if it's really bothering you, Radiesse is approved for that. You can also use Radiesse for the back of your hand. So as you get a little bit older, obviously your hands can give away your age. So you can fill in those areas by using something like Radiesse. There are also biostimulatory fillers, which are completely different materials and work in completely different ways than the typical fillers that we think about. One is Sculptra Aesthetic, and that one is actually a form of acid that gets injected into your skin. Again, acid always sounds like a scary word, but it's not. It's just a man-made polymer that they're injecting into your skin. There's also Balafill, which is made of non-biodegradable acrylic beads that are in cow-derived collagen. It's very interesting. Both of those fillers are completely different from the other types of fillers I was talking about. The other types of fillers, you can actually dissolve them if you don't like the results, which is actually one of the best things about those is you can get rid of it. These are essentially permanent, and the way they work is as they're injected into your skin, you see what it's gonna look like, but then it all dissipates, it goes away, and what it does is it's actually stimulating collagen growth in your skin. So you're gonna get that plumping effect over time instead of the immediate effect. The only immediate effect you get is literally like the day of, you leave being like, I look good, but then it completely dissolves and then it starts to stimulate that collagen growth. It's very fascinating and interesting, and it's permanent, which is what I like about it. And when I say permanent, it's as permanent as your aging allows it to be, because obviously you're gonna just continue to age, but it's permanent in that sense, in that you're gonna get the collagen production, but of course you're gonna just continue aging as well. So you gotta keep that in mind. And because of that, the FDA has approved it to last up to about 5 years. The two differences about the usages of these two fillers is Sculptra Aesthetic is used for anti-aging a lot of the time because you want that collagen production. You wanna, get that boost, that plumping in your skin, whereas Balafill is commonly used to fill acne scars. So when you get those pits in your skin, or if you have some kind of scar that left an indentation, you can fill the area with Balafill. I'd say the only issue, besides not being able to dissolve it if you don't like it, is that both of these fillers have been known to sometimes leave lumps under your skin, and if you get those lumps, you can actually feel them. They feel like little balls. You have to have them surgically removed, so that's also something to keep in mind, but I don't find that it's very common, or at least I don't feel like people talk about it often if it is common. As far as the cost for filler, it can range from anywhere between $650 to $2,500, and it can get really expensive depending on how much filler you want to put in your face. It's kind of endless. You can keep going and going, and I'm seeing this trend these days online where people just really go to town, especially under their eyes. But something to keep in mind is that doctors typically pay around $250 to $350 per syringe. So if you're seeing deals out there and they're less than that, then it could be counterfeit. So keep that in mind, because that does still happen. People still use silicone like in shady places and stuff, so you want to be very careful. Or they're maybe diluting it with something that might not be safe for you. So keep that in mind. You want to go to an expert. You also want to make sure that that expert knows the difference between the different types of filler. I'm not expecting you guys to remember all of this stuff. It's a lot of information to take in, but I just wanted to point all of this out because it really explains why you want to go to someone who is truly an expert. And I always recommend someone who's a board certified plastic surgeon, especially a facial plastic surgeon. That's who I go to. I go to a facial plastic surgeon named Dr. Deer, or maybe a board certified dermatologist. Again, you can see a PA, you can see a nurse practitioner. There are a lot of people that can be experts in this, but you just want to make sure you're not their guinea pig. And also before treatments, just like Botox and neurotoxins, you want to avoid any blood thinners, aspirin, stuff like that. You also want to avoid supplements and medications that can thin your blood out and cause bleeding, because mostly what you want to avoid is the bruising, because that really gives it away that you got something done and it's very annoying to have. So supplements to keep in mind are St. John's wort, there's ginkgo biloba, fish oil can actually thin your blood, and you want to avoid aspirin and ibuprofen. As far as pain level, I feel like fillers can sometimes get painful. It depends on where you're getting it done. If you're getting it done in your lips, it's usually painful, you guys. It's not a very nice procedure to have done. Luckily, if you're going to a good professional, they're going to do something like numb the area. So there's usually steps taken to make it a more comfortable experience, but that doesn't mean that it's completely pain-free. Sometimes it can be painful. Some people I talk to are like, it's no biggie. Some people I talk to are like, I cried the entire time. So it kind of depends on your pain tolerance, but also whatever it is that your doctor is doing to help alleviate that pain. All right, so those are some of the really common basic differences between Botox and filler. The best way I tell people to distinguish it is Botox freezes everything, so that those are like your expression lines. You're gonna go like that. You might not see an expression anymore. And filler helps to plump that area. So when you see somebody with like chipmunk cheeks, they're using filler. If they've got big lips, they're using filler. So those are the big differences. filler plumps, Botox freezes. I hope this video was informational for you guys. I was joking around in the beginning when I say like people talk shit and they don't really know what they're talking about, but it's kind of true. I know a lot of you are also just interested in these types of treatments and you want to know what's right for you. I just really recommend going to a good professional, a good expert. Read their reviews online, get recommendations, look at their social media to see what they're doing, and just make sure that they have qualifications that really make it right for them to be doing something like injectables, because there are so many people out there now who do injectables, that claim to do injectables, and you can still find really shady people that are doing it like in their basements, and I don't recommend that. You can do so much harm to yourself. So you wanna make sure you're going to a professional. You wanna make sure you're spending the right amount of money on it too. I know a lot of people are like, I get it for cheap here. Well, I'm glad you get it for cheap. I hope you're just getting it safely done too. So keep that in mind. Find me on Instagram and Twitter if you want to talk more. You can also join our private Facebook group. It's called Beauty and Wellness Questions Answered. I'll leave links to all of it down below in the description box, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.